This is Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson in for Julie Grant. Thanks for being with us. It's a big morning here at Court TV and a big day there in Virginia. Closing arguments set to begin in the AuPair affair murder trial for defendant Brendan Banfield, accused of killing his wife Christine and a man named Joseph Ryan in what prosecutors allege was a calculated catfishing plot. Here's a live look at that courtroom there. There's the seal. As we wait for those closing arguments set to begin at any moment, let's take a look back at some key moments from yesterday. Defendant Brendan Banfield was on the stand detailing what he called his side of the story.
Had you ever seen Joseph Ryan before? Had you ever had any communications with him before?
On February 24th is the only time I had communications with him in that room.
Please tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury exactly what you observed with regard to his contact with Christine.
Christine was, I would describe as nude and on all fours. And Joe Ryan was behind her, angled slightly behind her, slightly to the left of her. He was clothed and he was looking directly at me as I opened the door.
What were you thinking in terms of Joe Ryan with a knife to Christine's neck?
I don't know that I've ever been more panicked in my life. I was hoping to de-escalate the situation. I wanted him to let her go. I repeated to drop the knife and to let her go. He said that she was his and that she gave herself to him. To me is what she gave herself to me is what he said.
What, if anything, took place that caused you to discharge your firearm?
It appeared that he did a very forceful stab towards Christine, and Christine kind of spun away from him. And that's when I fired at him.
Have you ever used or looked at FetLife prior to the discovery that's come out in this case?
No, I had never used or looked at or heard of FetLife previously.
Were you aware of Christine using FetLife at all?
No, I didn't have any knowledge of Christine using FetLife.
In terms of your sexual relationship with Christine, what, if any, differences did you have?
I was not interested in ever harming her. I was never interested in sexual violence. I would say that we also had a discrepancy of how often we would like to have sex, or I would like to have sex more frequently than we did.
Did you have any sort of plan for what February 24th became?
No, it was a situation I was never expecting, never expected to be in, would never want anyone to be in.
And why did you shoot Joe Ryan on February 24th?
He was attacking Christine. He was stabbing her. I mean, I wish I shot him earlier.
Let's understand, this is the first time you've told this story or any story about what happened in the bedroom on February 24th, 2023, correct?
Yes.
And you were given the opportunity to tell a court what happened when you were brought in to testify at Juliana's preliminary hearing. And at that point in time, you didn't tell anybody this story, right?
I was advised that defense of others is not relevant for preliminary hearings. And it was my intention that I was going to testify at Juliana's trial.
Okay, but at the preliminary hearing, you didn't even admit to Christine being your wife, correct?
That's what I was instructed to by my attorney.
You indicated that this affair with Juliana was really a nothing, right? This was just an affair. You had had others. This was not a relationship.
I would say that I had feelings for her, but they weren't nearly as strong as feelings for my wife.
All right, do you recognize this letter?
Yes.
And this is your letter to Juliana?
Correct.
Written while she's incarcerated, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say that in this letter you profess your undying love for Juliana?
Yes, it appears that I was definitely in love with her. Definitely starting in the summer of 23.
And the long hot cuddle, was that before Christine's death?
No, that was after. It was We rode a bike and got caught in the rain.
Commonwealth's 250. Do you recognize this letter? Again, you to Juliana?
Yes.
And in this one, you're discussing baby names for your future children with her.
That is something that she wanted to talk about.
But you are contending, again, these feelings, these very strong feelings, these let's be together for the rest of our lives feelings did not exist when your wife was alive.
Correct.
Okay, and they certainly did not motivate you to kill your wife.
Juliana and I weren't even together when Christine died.
You had broken up, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you need to kill your wife to get her back?
Definitely not.
Live pictures to show you right now in that Virginia courtroom. The defendant, it all comes down to this, moments away from those closing arguments. And then the 12 jurors are going to decide his fate. Here to discuss, law enforcement and trial consultant Sonny Slaughter. Sonny, thanks for being with us. If I have to cut you off, I apologize when closings start, but your overall thoughts on the case?
Good morning, Matt. Thank you for having me. I believe that this case is mischaracterized. This is a domestic violence murder by ambush, where this perpetrator and predator is engaging in what I call veil, victimhood engineered as an image to lie and manipulate. I think they should have also charged him with domestic violence murder. These type of cases require an enhancement. Although we don't have those in the law currently, I believe that we need them. His testimony yesterday was abhorrent. It was indefensible and very arrogant, to say the least.
Yeah, and it looks like the jury is making their way back into the box. Everyone is standing on their feet waiting for this jury. And then it's going to be closing arguments. We know that the Commonwealth gets 2 shots, so they are going to go first with their initial closing argument. Then it'll be the defense team, and then the state, or the Commonwealth in this case, will give a rebuttal closing argument. Look at him just watch that jury walk in right now. Those jury instructions were given earlier today. They also went over a couple last-minute motions, including what evidence will be released and what will remain under seal. We know that there's a video message of his daughter that's going to remain under seal. Some of the crime scene photos, just too graphic to release to the public. Let's listen in for the judge for a minute.
The payroll, you keep that door open every time you come back. I really appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you now have heard all the evidence in this case. All right, before the lawyers make their closing arguments, the court will give you the instructions of the law that you are to apply in deciding this case. Since it has been quite a while since I gave you the preliminary instructions, I want to remind you that in their closing arguments, the lawyers will refer to the testimony and other evidence that you will have heard, but what the lawyers say in their closing arguments is not as self-evidence. Their statements are only their recollection of what the evidence in the case was. It is your collective recollection as 12 jurors of what the evidence in this case was, which shall govern your deliberations. In addition, remember your notes should be used only as an aid to your memory. You should not give your notes precedence over your independent recollection of the evidence, and you should rely on your independent recollection of what the evidence in the case was, and you should not be unduly influenced by the notes of other jurors. In addition, a reminder that the court has sealed the names of the jurors for a year. Just wanted to make sure I remind you of that. Okay, as far as the jury instructions are involved, you'll be able to take these written jury instructions into the jury room with you, and we'll make copies for all 12 jurors, okay? So you don't need to take notes on them right now, but I would ask for your attention when I read them, okay? With respect to the instructions I'm about to give, you might notice that at the top of them, some of them are numbered and some of them are lettered. You not have to concern yourself with that. You're just looking at the body of the instruction themselves, okay? Some of the instructions may appear to be in conflict. This is because the court cannot predict your...
Okay, so the judge is going to be detailing those jury instructions. By law, she has to read them out loud to the jury. We're going to take a short break right now. You're not going to miss anything of the closings. Closings in the case against Brendan Banfield in the AuPair affair murder trial coming up next.
Did an affair lead to double murder?
The Commonwealth's Attorney's Office has secured an indictment against Brendan Banfield for the murder of his wife, Christine, and the murder of Mr. Ryan.
Prosecutors allege the defendant planned to run away with the family's au pair. So he killed his wife and another man.
He was there, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The AuPair affair murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. Closing arguments in the AuPair affair murder trial soon underway in Virginia. Right now, that's a live look. The judge going over those all-important jury instructions. Wow, he doesn't look too happy, does he? Soon, his fate in the hands of that jury. So the jury is going to consider 2 counts of aggravated murder under 2 different theories, and 1 count of commission of a felony with a firearm, and 1 count child endangerment. Let's listen to the judge for a bit.
Probable consequences of his acts. The Commonwealth bears the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt the identity of the defendant as the person who committed the crimes charged. If the Commonwealth has not met this burden, you must find the defendant not guilty. You may consider the character of the defendant when proven by the evidence, whether good or bad, along with the other factors and circumstances in the case in determining his guilt or innocence. The statements presented to you as having been made by the defendant are submitted for your consideration along with all the other evidence. The weight, value, credibility, and reliability of those statements are questions for your determination. If you believe from the evidence that the defendant previously made a statement inconsistent with his testimony at this trial, that previous statement may be considered by you as proof that what the defendant previously said is true. Juliana Perez Magales has testified that she was an accomplice in the commission of the crime charged in the indictment. While you may find your verdict upon her uncorroborated testimony, you should consider such testimony with great care, and you are cautioned as to the danger of convicting the defendant upon the uncorroborated testimony of an accomplice. Nevertheless, if you are satisfied from the evidence of the guilt of the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt, the defendant may be convicted upon the uncorroborated evidence of an accomplice. If you believe that the defendant was without fault in provoking or bringing on the killing of Joseph Ryan, and if you further believe that the defendant reasonably feared under the circumstances that they appeared to him, that he or others were in danger of being killed or that he or others were in danger of great bodily harm, then the killing was in self-defense and you should find the defendant not guilty. The defendant contends that he acted in defense of another person. Under Virginia law, this defense is governed by the same principles that apply to self-defense. Number 1, burden of proof. If the evidence raises a reasonable doubt as to whether the defendant acted in lawful defense of another, the jury must find him not guilty. Number 2, reasonable belief of imminent danger. The defendant must have had a reasonable belief that the person he sought to protect was in imminent danger of bodily harm. All right, closing arguments.
Thank you, Your Honor. And if we can have the display for the jury activated from our table, and it does include sealed exhibits, so we'd ask it not be displayed to the gallery.
Just to the jury and not
Yes,
to the
please.
gallery.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You good? Okay. Good morning. Thank you so much, not just for what you're going to do today, but for all of the time that you have spent carefully considering the evidence that we've been able to put before you, for the attention that you've paid, for the notes that you've taken, for the time that you've given up away from your daily lives, your jobs, and your families. Without your work here, Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan would not be able to find justice. So thank you. The judge has read the instructions to you. They'll go back to the jury room with you, and you're going to have those as your guide in making your decision. I would draw your attention to the fact that you've been given 2 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of use of a firearm in commission of murder, and 1 count of child endangerment. Talking first about the aggravated murder instructions. They have 3 parts. You'll first need to find that Brendan Banfield killed Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. You'll need to find that those killings were willful, deliberate, and premeditated. You'll need to find for one of the counts that those 2 murders occurred within a 3-year period, and for the other count that those 2 murders occurred within the same transaction or occurrence. We know that they were killed during the same event within the Banfield residence, so that should knock that one out for you. 3 years, pretty simple as well. We know that they occurred on the same day. It's the first element that we're going to talk about, that Brendan Banfield killed both Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. We know that on February 24th, 2023, he executed his plan to murder his wife and an innocent stranger. He was in love with Juliana. He can pretend that this was a fling, an affair, he'd had them before, no big deal. He was in love with Juliana. He was afraid of losing her. He needed to get rid of his wife so that they could be together, so that they could marry, so that they could have those babies that he was picking out names for. Juliana told us how the plan was crafted and how it played out that morning in the Banfield house. But you've heard directly from our detectives and our experts the uncontradicted evidence of Brendan Banfield's culpability. You needn't rely only on Juliana's story. There has been a plethora of evidence to help you meet your burden in this case. Let's walk through just the highlights. Our digital evidence. While the digital evidence cannot tell us definitively who was behind the screen, we heard that a bunch. We know that to be true. What it can tell us is that Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalhães are more likely to be the ones to have set up Joe Ryan to come into the house to fake rape Christine on February 24th. There is no digital history, none, of Christine Banfield using dating sites, fetish sites, searching for pornography, talking to other men prior to the January inception of this scheme. Brendan told you that more than 10 years ago, there were incidents of affairs involving rough sex. But you have zero evidence to corroborate that self-serving statement. Think about the 2 days of Mr. Litsky's testimony for the defense and the 3 times that Detective Miller was called to this stand. If there was one scintilla of evidence that supported these claims of infidelity, of interest in sexual violence, don't you think you might have heard about it? The FetLife and Telegram contacts all occur on Christine's laptop, frequently while her phone is in use with something completely innocuous. You remember the frozen tickets, the Lululemon shopping, the family vacations the day before the murder? 2 devices, 2 different people. The FetLife and Telegram usage only ever occurred when Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalhães are in the home. Is it at all plausible that this woman wouldn't take advantage of an empty house to engage in her plans for adultery? That on the 2 weekends that her husband and the nanny are out of the house, those are the 2 weekends where we see 0 FetLife activity, 0 Telegram activity? Let's look at the chats themselves. Slide 1. How many potential targets were turned down by Juliana and Brendan because they wanted to meet in person first? Because they wanted to talk on the phone? Because they wanted pictures that included Christine's face? Does this make any sense for someone seeking a new relationship in an area of sexual exploration that would be new to them? Why would the real Christine Banfield have been concerned about taking these safety precautions? For that matter, why would the real Christine Banfield have been searching for someone who was willing to engage in knife play when she had a blood clotting disorder? Why would Christine use a phone from a gym bathroom, photo from a phone taken in a gym bathroom when she has all of these far better pictures available? That one keeps stumping us. There are so many more whys, and I'm sure you have plenty of them in your own heads, but the answer is the same to all of these whys, because it wasn't Christine, it was Brendan Banfield with the help of Juliana. let's talk about our physical evidence. You heard from Detective Leach, Dr. Kessler, Ms. McCarthy, Dr. Greenspoon, Ms. Colombo. She was up there forever with all those lab sheets. They gave us a million things to think about. Slide 4. Christine Banfield died as a result of 7 stab wounds to her neck. She suffered massive blood loss. Next, the knife Brendan used to kill her was a kitchen knife with an approximately 4-inch blade, the kind you use for chopping up vegetables. This was the knife that Joe Ryan brought because Anastasia asked him to. This was not the killing knife that Brendan Banfield had envisioned for his scheme. Next, Joe Ryan was shot twice. Once in the head by Brendan Banfield, incapacitating him. A second time by Juliana in the chest, tearing a large hole through his heart and lodging in his spine. His wounds were rapidly fatal, according to Dr. Kessler, and we saw that there was little to no blood from the chest wound. Iris Daly-Graf told you that he would have been incapable of movement following that second shot. Next. We saw evidentiary confirmation of the affair. The semen stains on Juliana's bed sheets. We also saw the photos of Juliana's clothing moved into the primary bedroom when the search warrant was executed in October following the murders. We saw the photos of Brendan and Juliana together, both before and after the murders. Her photos from her Instagram, their family photos in the bedroom after the murder. We saw the records from the shooting range for the purchase of the gun and the training of Juliana to shoot it. Slide 8. We saw the deactivation of the automatic locking feature on the front door at 5:47 a.m. the morning of the murders, done from Christine's phone by the person who knew how the locking system operated, Brendan Banfield. We saw Christine's phone turned off at 6:46 a.m. and hidden in a drawer in a bar table in the kitchen. This is just not where you keep your phone. This is not where we heard that this woman kept her phone. This is not where a person who's about to engage in potentially risky behavior puts her source of help. A floor away, turned off, in a drawer, off to the side of the kitchen. Just doesn't make sense. We saw Brendan Banfield drive to McDonald's and hang out, waiting for the call from Juliana. We see their call records, 10 and 11, between Juliana, Christine's phone, which is turned off, Brendan, Christine's phone, which is turned off. They're creating a record.
Hitting the pause button right now for you to bring in my guest, law enforcement expert and trial consultant, Sunny Slaughter. Willful, deliberate, and premeditated. Your thoughts on her closing?
She is connecting the dots, lining up the math, and sending him straight to prison with this closing.
Yeah, and you know, I really appreciated the way that she started it because if he is convicted of what the Commonwealth accuses him of this grotesque double murder and this plot, she started out with saying that this will be justice for the victims.
Exactly. And you know, we're talking so much about the wife that we do seem to forget that there was another victim, a man who was blindsided by all of this. I think this defense case has really been well put together. I think the investigation was well done. And I think that the defendant's poor planning, even though he had such knowledge and forethought about what he wanted to do, thank goodness he was found out early. He was brought to trial. Let's hope, and I believe in the jury system, that they will see through his lies, through his manipulation, and that they will convict him accordingly. We have got to stop ignoring the signs and signals of men like him and women like him who participate in significant cover-ups to manipulate us as individuals, as communities and people when they commit these heinous crimes because they just don't want to get a divorce.
Sunny Slaughter, thank you so much for your analysis. Coming up, more of the Commonwealth's closing argument in the AuPair affair murder trial. You're watching Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice. Back to closing arguments in the AuPair affair murder trial in just a moment. But first, that breaking news. A judge has ruled that Luigi Mangione will not face a death penalty if convicted on federal charges. The decision is a loss for federal prosecutors who have been adamant about pursuing the death penalty in Mangione's upcoming murder trial for the shooting death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The judge also ruled today that evidence found in Mangione's backpack will be allowed at trial. Earlier this week, prosecutors asked for the state trial to take place in July. We'll, of course, keep you posted on any new developments in the case on air and online. Now back to Virginia and those closing arguments in the AuPair affair murder trial, which are underway. The Commonwealth laying out their case in chief before this jury. Let's get you back to court.
They're creating a record. It's a plan. It is premeditated. We see this false attempt to check in on Christine so that they can tell the story to the police when they arrive, that they did everything they possibly could. Next, we see the lock at the top of the basement door that Brendan Banfield did not think to engage to protect his daughter. Even under his own version of this event, he agrees he didn't think about it. He left his 4-year-old child in the basement with guns out, stranger in the house, and something happening that caused him to be concerned. We heard the 911 calls. We have a hang-up at 7:47 with Joe moaning in the background, and then a 15-minute gap before anyone calls 911 back. 8:02, 15 minutes between when someone in that house thought the police should be there and when they finally asked for help. We saw the body-worn camera and the photos from the scene, blankets piled near the bodies, Brendan Banfield kneeling on this blue towel, the towel that has very little staining, completely inconsistent with having been used to stop the flow of blood coming from Christine's neck. We heard that the carpet was soaked through to the subfloor. We saw Brendan Banfield's handcuffs that he didn't use. Magazines full of bullets he didn't shoot, collected from him after the murders. And finally, the blood evidence. You heard from Lieutenant Giacchio and former Deputy Chief Bruch that it was Iris Dalligraf's report that finally pushed this case over the edge and brought the charges against Mr. Banfield months before Juliana decided to flip. That's how strong this evidence is. That's how reliable this evidence is. Ms. Dalligraf walked us through so many inconsistencies in this scene, proving that it had been manipulated. And you heard absolutely nothing from the defense about this evidence. Mr. Banfield gave you zero explanation for any of this evidence. Slide 15. They have provided no explanation for Christine's blood smeared on the right hand of Joe Ryan, leaving voids between the fingers. They have no explanation for the blood smeared across the top of the right onto the left, leaving that void on Joe Ryan's hand where they had been overlapping. Next. For that matter, you have no explanation from defense for how his hands came to be in that position, neatly folded on his chest, covering the bullet wound that penetrated his spine, immobilizing him. How could that have happened if you are to believe Mr. Banfield? There's been no explanation for the bloody hand-like smears on Joseph Ryan's jeans containing Christine Banfield's DNA. There's been no explanation from defense for how his jeans ended up bunched under his rear. Next slide. There's been nothing to tell us why a mixture of Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield's blood, a mixture, could possibly have been on the inside of his waistband at the buttonhole, on the button, and on the zipper. Nothing from the defense to explain how Joe Ryan could possibly have manipulated his pants after being shot in the head, given that no other bleeding wounds were present. If his blood is on those pants, on that button, on that zipper, he was bleeding when they were touched. How could he, Joseph Ryan, have been the one to touch his button, his zipper, the waistband of his pants, to pull them down in that fashion? Brendan told you he never touched Joseph Ryan. And yet we have distinctive finger-shaped parallel lines on Joseph Ryan's arm and small circular stains consistent with blood having been dropped from above while Joseph Ryan lay on his back. Next. And then there's the blood on Joe's hip. Blood that traveled onto his body and then ran down to the floor with the assistance of gravity while he lay prone. It couldn't have come from his chest. That wound barely bled. He was laying down when blood was shed. Makes it pretty impossible that he stabbed Christine Banfield. Next. On the other hand, Brendan Banfield.
Hitting the pause button for you right now. We do have to take a short break. What do you think about the Commonwealth's closing argument? Their final push to this jury? Let us know on social media. More closings in the case against that guy, Brendan Banfield, after the break. This is Court TV Live.
Did an affair lead to double murder?
The Commonwealth's Attorney's Office has secured an indictment against Brendan Banfield for the murder of his wife, Christine, and the murder of Mr. Ryan.
Prosecutors allege the defendant planned to run away with the family's au pair. So he killed his wife and another man.
He was there, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The AuPair affair murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
It all comes down to this. Closing arguments in the AuPair affair murder trial underway in Virginia. The Commonwealth, they get to go first. They can also give a rebuttal case. Let's get you back to court.
Brendan Banfield has cast off on his jeans. He has blood all over his hands. The blood stains on the backpack don't line up with the position of its contents. The blood on Joe's face is not consistent with his final position. And I'm sorry, I'm back to Joe's hands. This scene was manipulated. And it wasn't by Joe. It wasn't by Christine. And according to him, Juliana didn't do it. You have zero explanation from the defense as to how all of this blood evidence can be as it is. The Commonwealth gave you an explanation. Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalis colluded to kill Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield. That makes sense. They created accounts, they chatted up potential victims, they got Joe Ryan into the house, and then they shot him. Brendan stabbed Christine, let her bleed out on the floor, and then dripped, smeared, and wiped her blood on Joseph Ryan's body to make it look like he had attacked Christine. Then they called the police. Brendan let Juliana take the fall, and it took a little bit of doing, but here we are, and it's his turn to be held accountable. All of this evidence can leave you with no doubt that Brendan Banfield killed Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield. That is the first element of the aggravated homicide statute. The hard work is done. Element 2, that the killing was willful, done with a bad purpose, intentional, and deliberate. There can be no question in your minds as to the intentionality of this act, the deliberateness of this act. You must also find that it was premeditated, that at some point before the killing, he decided to kill Christine and Joe. I believe that we presented you with that evidence as well. For one of the offenses, you find that he killed 2 people within 3 years. As we've identified, same day, definitely within 3 years. For the other offense, you find that it was 2 people killed during the same transaction or occurrence. They were both killed in the room as part of the same plot, by the same person, same transaction or occurrence. The second offense is for the use of a firearm in the commission of the murders. We know from our experts that Joe Ryan died of his multiple gunshot wounds, one of which came from Brendan. If you have any question about whether or not Brendan can be held responsible when Juliana also shot Joseph Ryan, you'll have instruction O, that is concert of action. So I'm going to read to you what it says. If there is concert of action with the resulting crime, one of its incidental probable consequences, then whether such crime was originally contemplated or not, all who participate in any way in bringing it about are equally answerable and bound by the acts of every other person connected with the consummation of such resulting crime. Virginia makes it easy. Translate. If you think that Juliana Perez Magales and Brendan Banfield were working together to kill Christine and Joseph Ryan, then Brendan can be responsible for Joseph Ryan's death, regardless of which bullet did the most damage. It's not a test of either or. They were working together. That makes him equally responsible. The last charge is the endangerment to Valerie. So while in his custody, that the defendant willfully or negligently caused or permitted the life of such child to be endangered. He made it out to be Juliana's idea, but he brought Valerie into that home. He left her in the basement, knowing that Joe Ryan was upstairs. He left her in the basement while he shot and killed Joe Ryan. He left her in the basement while he stabbed his wife. He could have locked the door. He could have done this on a day she wasn't home. He could have made arrangements for someone else to have her overnight. But that didn't work with his plan. So he's guilty of this offense as well. I appreciate, again, all of the attention that you've given. I appreciate, again, all of the hard work you're about to face. Please be thoughtful in your deliberations. But at the end of the day, I don't think that there can be any reasonable doubt that Mr. Banfield has committed each and every one of the offenses that we have put before you today. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Jenna Sands, prosecutor there for the Commonwealth, giving the first part of their closing. Remember, they can go twice. We're anticipating a rebuttal. Let's bring in my guest for this hour, Sonny Slaughter. Okay, so closing arguments, as you know, my friend, are not evidence. But if you're in the defense chair right now and you're listening to all of the blood evidence that wasn't accounted for or explained, are you going to address it in your closing?
I think you have to, Matt. I think you have to say something about it, because to ignore it allows the prosecution to then level up on everything that cannot be ignored when it came to this homicide. As you said, much of the information and the pictures and things have been sealed because they're so grotesque. So you really have to address how it is that all of this blood evidence doesn't match the story that the defendant is trying to tell.
Yeah.
None of what has happened, none of what he has said made sense.
Yeah, and we're going to find out what this defendant, through his attorney, does address or doesn't. Sonny Slaughter, thank you. The defense, they're up to bat. Let's watch.
I join in the Commonwealth's thanks for your attention, for the time that you've put into this. I intend to present to you with highlights of many of the things that we went through, but I can assure you I'm not going to be going through the evidence that's already been moved in. And it took a long time, and you were very patient, and everyone was very patient.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Is that better? Your
just a little further up.
Can everyone hear that? Okay. I'll try to speak a little louder. Ladies and gentlemen, I join in thanking you for your time, for your attention. You can see over the nearly 3 weeks that everybody was attentive, and that's something that is something that's crucial to this process, and so I thank you. When my children were younger, I used to walk out of the house and tell them, I'm going to defend the Constitution. They didn't have any idea what that was, and oftentimes that became, okay, whatever, Dad. I was a prosecutor then. I was a prosecutor in Fairfax County. And what that meant to me was you presented a case, no matter who it was, you presented a case where you looked at all possibilities and you looked at all evidence to determine and to make sure that you were pursuing someone that the evidence would support. In this case, this was quite unusual. When we first met for the initial opening, I talked to you about some things that I thought you should look into. I thought that you should have an ear towards what is it that they're going to present as evidence. And even I was surprised that the evidence that ultimately was presented by the Commonwealth was actually from my case. The only people that were called to testify from the Commonwealth's case in chief were for body cam video, police officers, a couple of those, and Detective Terry Leach. And he was the one who identified all of the scene photos. He identified many of the pieces of evidence that were brought in. And he was able to talk a little bit about things such as the blood stains on the gun, the blood stains next to the bed. And what he told you, ladies and gentlemen, and this was the extent of, I think, their testimony in their case, was that there are numerous things within this scene that we can see in pictures, but they were never tested. There are numerous things that became the centerpiece of the fantastic story that the Commonwealth tells, yet they were never tested. For example, if I were to have the opportunity to cross-examine, say, the chief detective of this case, I might ask, why wasn't there fingerprints done, or even DNA, of this gun safe that we hear about? We hear Juliana goes into the back bathroom and talks about getting a gun. It changes a little bit over time, but if someone had said they went to the gun safe, because we're talking about guns, we're talking about shooting, why wouldn't there be some sort of evidence to either corroborate or preclude that possibility?
We are approaching the top of the hour. My thanks to Sunny Slaughter.